All right, sorry to interrupt. Just wanted to
Okay,
make sure to record. Yeah, go ahead.
So we're talking about Workspaces, and Workspaces has been a project that we've been talking about for years, and we're finally acting on it. This is previously known as Simplifying Groups and Projects, and there's a Slack channel called Simplifying Group and Projects, where you can ask all the different questions that you have about Workspace. At the moment, what we're planning on creating is that the workspace would be the top level namespace. So that would include all your groups and your subgroups and your projects and your whatnot. Now, the way that we've decided to implement this in terms of the technical architecture is that, and this is a bit weird because our end goal is to create a top level namespace, which, there's a hierarchy that you have everything. And the goal of this, there's actually several goals for Workspace. One of them is to get to feature parity between self-managed customers and SaaS, because at the moment, SaaS customers are at a disadvantage because all the instance level features do not exist for them. Our top level is a top level group, but you can't do anything in an instance level, so it doesn't cascade down to everything. You don't have your admin panel, so you can't really manage your users as you would want. And really that's what we want to do. We want to bring that experience of the admin panel into the top level namespace, but also let you do everything at the instance, which will now be called the workspace level. The only difference we should see between self-managed and SaaS users at the end of this project is the hardware settings, which are not applicable for SaaS users. So that should go away and everything else should probably be the same. Now, the way that we started the project is exactly opposite. So as I mentioned, our end goal is top level namespace, but we're starting from the very, very low level container. And what we want to create, and this is our goal, our OKR for this quarter, is to create a construct, a container that can theoretically be anything. It can be a project, it can be a group, it can be a subgroup, and it can be that top level namespace. And the only difference between them is the hierarchy. And what we will gain when this is actually implemented and complete is that we will get rid of a bunch of redundant code. All of us PMs know that when we want to implement something, we actually have to implement it at least 3 times. So once for the project, one for the group, and one for the instance. And that creates a bunch of redundant code that basically does the same thing with some nuances. So what this would do, it would eliminate that need to actually implement it many, many times. And it is an opportunity for us to get rid of a bunch of redundant code. So that's the second goal. So one goal was parity, and the second goal is cleaning up our code base, which will also have really great positive effects like reduce weird behavior. Like sometimes if you do something on the group level, it doesn't behave as you would expect on the project level. And also some security vulnerabilities and bugs and so on, which are all because of the weird way that we implement stuff. Our first group that is joining the effort is Planet. And I don't think that we'll complete this as part of the OKR, though it was supposed to be the OKR. We were supposed to do a POC once we had this construct in place for them to move issues to the top level namespace. So I don't think that's going to be complete this quarter, but we wanted kind of them to be our first pilots, do a little POC on them, and then kind of instruct the rest of the team how we can move our other functionality. Because basically, once we have the construct, each team is going to have to move their own features into this new concept of workspace. That was a very, very brief intro into what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let me share a little bit about what we have planned, and then we can talk about maybe where these two come together and some of the timeline aspects of it, if that works for you. So on my team, we've got a fairly new feature. We actually just turned the feature flag on by default in 14.3 for security policies. And what this looks like is in the UI, you've got your security and compliance nav item, and then your policies area. And right now, these can only be created at the project level. So, obviously the next step for this is users want this at the group level, and they want this at the instance-wide or workspace level, right? Not tied to hardware, but they want it for their entire organization. And these policies let them do a really wide variety of things, everything from requiring certain security scans to be run to requiring MR approvals when certain numbers of vulnerabilities are found. There's a really wide range of things that these are going to address. But right now we've got an epic open, and I can share this with you in Slack so it doesn't get lost in the Zoom thread. But we've got these plans to move it up to the group in the workspace level because we know workspace is coming. And back when Melissa was over it, we talked about the workspace, and this has been on our backlog for a while. So I haven't really stayed up to date with all the plans regarding workspace, to be honest, for the last several months. But this is something that we've been working towards aspirationally for a long time. And we're actually now starting to get close to being ready to implement this. So just to share some of the designs for this, it would be that same security and compliance page. This would be at the group level. We would have it show up as a policy page. We're adding in a new column, basically saying where the policy exists. There's this flow down inheritance. So any policies that are created at the workspace level would flow down to all of the groups and projects beneath them. Any group level policies would flow down and affect all of the projects inside of that group. So we get some language here showing that the policy applies to all 56 projects in this group. And just showing where these things came from, right? If it's inherited from another group, if it's inherited from a workspace, or if it's part of its own group. And then of course we want this at the workspace level or namespace level. I'm really not sure what the best term is to describe that at the moment, but we want this at a per customer level. And I don't really know what this navigation area looks like, but ideally customers would be able to say, I want to require secret detection to run on all of my projects for all of my groups and everything that I own, right? They could just set that once at a workspace level, and that would flow down to everything inside of it. So those are the designs at a really high level. And I'm just trying to understand then, does this fit in with what you're doing? How do we take advantage of that inheritance? Are there any special considerations that our engineers need to be aware of as they go to build this out? And I guess the other question is, would it make more sense for us to do this at the group level first and then the workspace level, or just wait until that new container you're talking about is done and build it out in that shared container? Anyway, a lot of questions. I'm probably throwing too many at you at once, but that's the really high level of what we're.
So the container is supposed to be done by 14.5. So there isn't too much time to wait for it. But will that happen? I hope so. As you know, things are dynamic, but the team is currently working on it. So it should arrive sometime soon. So it's up to you whether you want to wait for that or already implement it. That's the short answer. What I would suggest you to do is ping Gosha from our team. She's leading the effort for Workspace so that she's aware of this issue. So technically she could probably give you more advice than I can in terms of the technical implementation. I would say Imra because he led the effort up until now, but he's on parental leave. So ping Gosha. And there's really no reason why you and Plan can't work in parallel to get your features in there. So the main blocker is getting the construct in place, that container, because before that's done, there's really no point to move anything to Workspaces. As I said, it's a little bit strange because we're starting bottom up instead of top to bottom, but I think it's smart. So that is my advice in terms of the technical questions. I can't give you better ones because I don't know enough about the code base to kind of guide you through there.
What about the UX aspect of it? The front end piece. for groups, it's pretty clear where we want that page to live. What are we looking at in terms of navigation at that workspace level and UI?
The navigation is a huge portion that is currently being validated slash thought about. We don't really have a designer yet on the team. We have one coming in, and we have someone that worked on it before. There's a whole navigation effort in the entirety of GitLab. So I think that's also being considered as a part of this. For the first MVC, we're not even touching navigation. What we're doing is just like giving you the name of the top level namespace, the workspace, and probably just letting you link quickly to the groups under it. The largest portion that will require navigation change from our side and what we're going to prioritize is the admin panel, which did not exist up until now in SAS. So it's way too early for me to answer your navigation questions, but if your team wants to contribute that, that's fine.
Okay, so it seems like probably the admin panel would be the best place for those namespace wide settings to live. But it sounds like you don't even have a stated milestone yet then for when you would make that available on SAS.
Not at all. I can show you what the very high level mockups look like. I put this in the documentation. So the link is, I don't know why I'm in it, but the link is here under user workspace. If you just search the docs, and you can see that this is kind of a very, very preliminary mockup of what this is going to be. You have the groups, you have specific features. This could be a policy or maybe not. Admin, and then you have the admin settings, blah, blah, blah. Sorry about my daughter in the background.
You're fine. Yeah, so this all makes sense. Like that looks good. I'm just trying to understand from a MVC perspective, right? Without having my team go and build all of that UI, would it make sense for us to just put that in the admin panel today, and then eventually you'll get to it and move it over and into SAS, or
Well, the downside of doing that, and I would advise you against it, is that you would lose your group settings.
You lose your group settings?
Yeah, you showed me that the policy was under the group.
Yes. Well, we want it under projects and groups and the workspace, so you can create policies at all the levels, ideally.
So if you are not willing to wait, I would start with group, because workspace and instance is a little bit more complicated if you're going to wait for the admin, because I assume that we're going to start with lifting and shifting before adding new stuff. And in group, you get both SaaS and self-managed customers.
Right. Okay. So once we have group done, though, right. Okay. So that makes sense. So you're basically suggesting we implement it at that top level object that you're creating, and we make it available for groups, but that we wait to do the front end UI for the namespace or the workspace until later. Is that?
I think so. Or you can just stick it in some place that's, not, as long as it's not the end state, but have somewhere where the users could actually access that.
Right.
Because I don't think this is the final view. It's just a very preliminary mock-up to give people like a sense of what we're talking about. But I think it's going to take a while. But I mean, we haven't even hired a front-end engineer yet.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll explore places with my UX designer. Yeah, the admin panel definitely has the downside that it's self-managed only. So maybe the security center, we'll have to figure that out. But it sounds like we'll just have to find a temporary place for the workspace management aspect of this to live until that view is created. But that helps to have a better idea of your timing there so that we can plan accordingly.
Yeah, just ping Nick Post on it because he's coming into the workspace designer position. So make sure he's in the loop.
I will add him to that design issue that we've got then. I think that's everything I had for today.
So I hope we get this done and completed and everyone can move their stuff. I wish I could give you earlier dates, but that's the reality.
Yeah, no worries. It just helps to have a good understanding because that helps our planning, right? Even if yours is a little bit further out, like I said, that's okay. Just knowing that is so that we can plan around it.
Great.
Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. It was nice chatting. Bye.